And so what you need to do is think about, one, pulling out information that's going to be relevant for your own literature review and the research topic that you're looking at, and also how those big ideas or findings are related to each other, which is what a concept map will help you with. And you also need to consider how documenting certain articles contribute to those big ideas. So again, is this article an article that is matching my research topic? Some of the articles that I've seen you find, well, kind of related to the larger, maybe, topic of breast cancer, for instance, doesn't relate to the specific research topic that you're looking at. So looking at, for instance, radiation for treatment of breast cancer, or lifestyle changes for keeping breast cancer at bay, or how nutrition plays a role in treating breast cancer. All of those, of course, are connected to breast cancer, but certainly not connected to the research topic that you've decided upon. So please consider some of these sources that you've found thus far, and whether or not they're going to still be useful for you for your literature review. Alright, so one example of a literature concept map is one in which you look at a larger topic or research topic, this one being the future of Utica. How is the Utica area going to thrive or not thrive? And so the main components or topics that this person is looking at is at the planning of the Utica area, the ways in which designs and participation of residents are created or enacted, the social kind of innovations that have been implemented to create a more kind of community concept for Utica, and the history of the Utica area. And so all of these are connected to the future of Utica, right? Here's the history, and then coming off of that is the history of the Utica area. And as you can see, they've got 3 different sources that all talk about the history of the Utica area that they've decided they're going to synthesize together and use. We're also going to talk about how this was primarily the Rust Belt. And so here are 3 sources that they're going to use, and also how these sources are then connected to the social innovation. As you can see, there's lines that then connect these, or the Rust Belt, and how this source over here, Friedman, also mentions the Rust Belt. So you'll see that there are a lot of sources that you're finding maybe in your research that aren't going to just fit into one area. So this source by Friedman fits into or discusses not only the Rust Belt, but also social innovation for diffusion of various different types of ethnicities or backgrounds, right? And so with social innovation, you'll see underneath there are 3 different areas in which one could consider how social innovation has actually caused the Utica area to be very successful. And so this is one in which I could see where you'd say, here's my larger research topic, here are the 4 main ideas or concepts that I'm looking at, and then coming off of them, here are what people have talked about in regard to, for instance, the scenario planning of the city, and here's the sources that relate to these subtopics. So this might be one type of concept map that would be interesting for you to consider. Another one, this is about research and managing IT companies in New Zealand. So here's the larger topic, and then here are the subtopics about managing IT companies. The consideration of IT companies would be commerce, one's resource management, and one's information management systems, right? So these are the 3 kind of main subtopics that one is going to be considering about IT, right? And again, for the purpose of this research paper, for most of you, I would be picking maybe 1 or 2, not 3, seeing that this is it may not seem short for you, but for most literature reviews and research papers in general, they're much larger if you're going to be looking at more than 1 or 2 subtopics regarding a larger research topic. So you'll see underneath here, under commerce, there are three different considerations one should think about with IT and commerce. That there is a up and coming and growing connection to e-commerce, which means commerce that is electronically conducted. That is also connected to how one manages the projects itself of IT companies, and then the ERP, which I will be honest, I don't really know what that means. However, as you can see within this concept map under e-commerce, they've listed all the sources that have similar discussions regarding the use of e-commerce. What might be even more helpful is underneath these would be some of the summaries or paraphrases from each of these sources, and maybe color coding them in relationship to maybe the first, the fifth, and the eighth talk about e-commerce and define it in this way, and the second and the fourth and the sixth talk about implementation of e-commerce in IT companies in a similar way, however that may be for you. But as you can see, underneath all of these kind of subpoints regarding these subtopics that are related to and necessary for understanding the use of research management in IT companies are subcategories with the sources that relate to these. And therefore, these sources are hypothetically and should be able to be synthesized and used together to make claims or arguments or provide background information about the topic. And then another synthesis map example would be, here's my literature map, and what I'm going to be looking at is culture, theories, and how it relates to information architecture. And underneath those would be then in culture related to information architecture. Here's some of my main sources, and underneath I've got some subtopics such as culture that resides in websites, cultural markers that seem to crop up, and then in particular the types of website and cultural markers that seem to be constant would be Arabic and Islamic interfaces that have a certain type of cultural dimension to them. And underneath the literature map for theories, here is my main theory, which is cultural cognition theory, which means that the ways in which we kind of embody and cognitively consider or react to certain types of stereotypes or certain types of cultural representations of individuals in many ways makes us read, respond, or define things because of what we're fed, what we typically see. So, for instance, when 9/11 happened, there was a joke by Eddie Murphy who was saying all black people around the world are rejoicing because they're now no longer the it group to fear, right? And this was quite evident, and I remember lots of people saying, well, if you were to go onto a elevator, would you go on if there was somebody who looked like they were Arabic or Islamic? This fear because of 9/11 caused many people's kind of cognition and their construction of reality to shift into one of being fearful of a certain demographics because of a few individuals. And this happens all the time, right? This is racial profiling. And a lot of research has actually been conducted since then because of that. And under these theories then connected, because of the way that we cognitively respond to some of these kind of scenarios, is then the way that we construct our reality of society, right? And here are some sources that Cyril, Joshua, Rust, that discuss this idea of how social reality is never something that is set in stone or somehow just born, but of course always being constructed and reconstructed and reconfigured based on the ways in which we actually represent social reality. It's not something, there's no rhyme or reason really as to why we would fear one culture over another other than because of the ways in which we define, represent them. So And this happens even for genders and for other things like that. But as you can see, the theories are connected together with their sources, as well as connected to the models in which this is represented in websites, right? And represented on the internet, and what that says about how our cultural cognitions and our constructs of reality become taken up and used and disseminated and discussed within these kinds of online cultural sites of communication and interaction. So again, another different type of concept map, but as you can see, the majority of these concept maps all start with, here is the larger research topic, here are the subtopics that I'm going to focus upon. This is my way of narrowing down this topic. And within these subtopics, here are some key points that are connected to that subtopic, and also how those key points are connected to other subtopics. And they should be, otherwise there's no point of having them be a part of your literature review. If you can't connect all of the information and all of the topics or ideas to each other, and then to the larger research topic, then it should not be there. And finally, I just wanted to give you some links for easy-to-use mapping tools that you could potentially use for your concept maps. Free are CMap, XMind, and VU. And then, of course, I don't imagine that you would want to buy anything, but this one has a free 30-day trial. But of course, the caveat to that would be that you'd have to remember to email and make sure that you're no longer registered, because they would probably automatically then charge you. And then there's some collaborative mapping platforms that you can use. There's drawing tools in Google Documents. There's a browser-based Mind42, which allows for kind of a drawing component, and then also Webspiration Beta, which is another platform that you could use, and also is collaborative, so other people could kind of go in and look at it and make adjustments or so forth. And lastly, as always, certainly stop in and see if I'm available, or email me if you want to set up a face-to-face or online appointment. Email me with anything that you've created and you want me to look over before submission. I certainly will do all that I can to be available to you. And when you are creating these concept maps, these are going to be really, really important for you when you then have to go and create that detailed outline of your literature review, in which that detailed outline should have key sources that you're synthesizing and using together, say to provide me with a very general overview of your topic, or key sources that you're synthesizing and using together to provide me with the general research or arguments that surround that research topic, and so forth, because then you will be using that outline along with those sources and the summary and synthesis of those sources to kind of write around for your 8 to 10 page literature review. So the more effort that you put into this, the more detail that you have, the better you're off when it comes to then writing up your literature review, which is the final step for Project 3. And also because you're going to be using Project 3 then for revision and adding on to for the final project, which is going to be a research proposal in which you create an introduction to a research topic, which would be this research topic that you will be researching. You will then be using Project 3, your literature review, and revising that based on feedback that I've provided to you, so that that literature review then functions very effectively for providing that background and providing that information as to why this is interesting to research, where the gap of research exists, and how you hope to fill that gap. And then the final component of Project 4 is a proposal, where you get to propose how that gap, how that problem, how that issue should be addressed. And we'll talk about that later, but some people do that in written form, some people do that through some type of suggestion for replicating a study, others do some type of informative brochure It just depends on the discourse community that you're a part of.